So I'm recording this. I'm going to be going through stuff really fast. The idea is that I want to put everything up on YouTube later so people can cross-reference because we're going to be covering a lot of material, and it could be a little daunting, especially if you're not used to Japanese names and terms, and if you're not familiar with Japanese comics. I'm going to be name dropping things left and right. So if something, yeah, if it's not familiar, don't worry about it. But yeah, so if you watch Japanese monster stuff, I'm assuming people here probably do. You might have seen, you know, on occasion we have these instances where this particular art style of Japanese comics comes up. Sorry, this screen is like sort of tiny, so I don't know if you can actually see what's on the screen. How is it for people in here? Okay, cool. So we've got a couple of examples here of call-outs to Japanese comics in Japanese monster material. I don't know how many. Anyone recognize any of these?
All these are scenes from Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Not quite. Two of them are scenes from Godzilla vs. Gigan, but I'm impressed by that. Have a manga.
Most appreciated, thank you.
Yep. So the other two, one of them I was like, maybe people aren't gonna get. The other one I was pretty sure nobody was gonna recognize because this here is actually a scene from an episode of Ultraman Ace where Yuko is kidnapped by a crazy dude that like draws monsters and then has them come to life. And then this is from a series called Thunder Mask, which is not even available on VHS in Japan, so I wouldn't expect anyone to have seen it. So just sort of a quick guide to what all we're covering. We're going to be talking about the relationship between kaiju and manga, and just going through a bunch of the manga that exist out there that are kaiju related. And we're going to be covering just Japanese comics, so no American comics. There's a great panel coming up later in the weekend for American giant monster comics, so definitely go check that one out. And we're going to talk a little bit about the various artists. So if you're not familiar, manga is basically just Japanese comic books. They're a little bit different in format from American comics. Usually manga are shorter because they're, you know, a creator-owned or single artist sort of vision thing, as opposed to, you know, Batman, which has been running for 75 years, and then when artists stops working on it, you know, you swap in a new one. Manga tend to be weekly as opposed to monthly. They tend to be black and white, and they're serialized in these big, you know, big magazines. But it's becoming more and more popular in the States recently, and if you go to a Barnes & Noble, you can see a lot of it. In Japan, it is huge. A third of the printed material in Japan is manga. And because of that, it covers all sorts of genres. And you know what is a genre? Kaiju material. But not all manga that's out there is kaiju stuff. So beware if you're going into Barnes & Noble. Don't expect everything to be giant monsters. But if you are aware of both, there's interesting crossovers that, you know, sometimes it's rewarding to be a fan of both. So for an example, there's a series of manga called Dragonball. Dragonball is not a giant monster series, it's a martial arts comedy, but the main character has a girlfriend who is basically Ultra 7, and his master can summon a baby Gamera to ride around on, and also the main character turns into a giant monkey at the full moon. This is the most popular manga in the world, Theo, so...
I have read it.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with giant monster stuff, this is going to seem, it's going to go way over your head. And, you know, conversely, let's say you're watching Super Monster Gamera. Well, the longest running manga of all time is a sitcom about a police officer. It's, you know, it's got a long Japanese title. I'm not going to try to say it all. It's called Kochikame for short. And there's a scene in Super Monster Gamera where the kids go to a police station and they see this dude and they freak out. And if you don't know that there's this super long running manga that stars this dude, who's a policeman that's at this police station, you're not going to like understand why are they getting excited about this. So, is it necessary to know giant monsters to enjoy Dragon Ball? Obviously not. Is it necessary to know Koji Kame to enjoy Super Monster Gamera? Can you enjoy Super Monster Gamera? I don't know. So you might notice we've been putting little disclaimers up in the top of the screen here, and we just want to sort of like have that as a shorthand because some stuff is available in English, some stuff is only available in Japanese, and then there's a wide range of content. So, you know, just sort of a general parental guide. I don't want anyone to come up to me like, oh yeah, I saw your panel, I'm totally gonna get a copy of Gantz for my 4-year-old. Like, no, don't do that. So, yeah, just, you know, be aware. So, when we talk about the kaiju genre, we start, even before Godzilla came out, there are 2 really big movies that were seminal works. Yes?
1926 The Lost World and 1933 King Kong.
Yep, absolutely.
You deserve a prize.
So both of these are big hits that sort of identified the giant rampaging monster genre, and both of these were actually adapted into manga shortly after World War II, when the ban on American films was lifted. They were both adapted by this dude named Osamu Tezuka. So the Lost World adaptation is available in English. The King Kong one is not. Both of these would be mostly all ages appropriate, I would say, with the caveat that the King Kong 1940s depictions of native islanders is sort of a little uncomfortable. So just, you know, be aware of that. But this dude, Osamu Tezuka, he is instrumental. He is sort of like the guy that people point to when you're talking about the origins of manga. Here's, we got a picture of him sitting on all of the books that he's written. So big deal manga author. And he's got this title in Japan, the God of Manga, in the same way that Eiji Tsuburaya is the God of special effects. Tezuka is the God of Manga.
Yeah, me and a friend always have a special effects director war over who's the best. He praises Stan Winston for creating a giant T-Rex. I say Eiji Tsuburaya for all his kaiju work.
Yeah, I mean,
best you could say they're both great because each one made a film that made a lasting impact on the world of film.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Don't forget Louis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen too.
Mm-hmm. So, if you follow Japanese movies, and like I do obsessively, you'll notice that a lot of Tezuka stuff has been adapted into movies. Like, just if you look at like Toho's science fiction fantasy movies, we have, you know, The Phoenix by Kon Ichikawa, and we have a Blackjack movie from Nobuhiko Obayashi. We'll get back to him. One I would definitely suggest for monster fans is Dororo, which is about a samurai who, like, 100 demons come and they steal his body parts, and then he has to go around. He turns himself into a cyborg and he goes around killing the demons to get his body parts back. But the Tezuka stuff doesn't end there, because he also came up with these 2 giant superheroes. One of them is Thunder Mask, and we've mentioned that it's sort of obscure. Not many people really talk about it. The other one is a series called Magma Taishi, which was brought to the States. It was adapted into a TV show a week before Ultraman came out. So it was technically the first, you know, science fiction color show on Japanese TV. And it was brought to the States as Space Giants. And if you see Lewis Austin around, just ask him and he will talk your ear off about it. So it's a seminal work, and also sort of introduces the whole Transformers thing, because the main character is a giant robot from space that turns into a rocket ship. So, but we were talking about King Kong before, weren't we? So you've probably seen this image floating around online. It's actually from a manga adaptation of the Rankin Bass King Kong show. I have not seen an episode where he fights the Statue of Liberty, but I believe it happens. It probably wasn't this graphic, though. This is from an artist named Daiji Kazumine. And Kazumine is a big name in the field of kaiju manga because he worked on all sorts of different adaptations of stuff. He, you know, did a Godzilla, Mirror Man, Spectre Man, Ultraman. you name it. And a lot of his manga is really well recognized as sort of classic. And in fact, even to the extent that, there are monsters that were made only in his manga that now have action figures. So if you're going around looking at Ultraman toys and you're like, I don't remember this one from the show, well, maybe it was from the comic book.
Cool.
Another artist that was involved with the Ultraman manga is Kentaro Nakajo, who's best known as the creator of Kiba the Bodyguard. So, that great quote that Samuel L. Jackson has in Pulp Fiction? Yeah, that's actually from Kiba the Bodyguard. But Nakajo is probably most significant for his manga that he did called Jumbo X, which, if you followed Tsuburaya shows, you're probably aware of the giant hero Jumborg Ace, and it's they were definitely cribbing a little from this when they were coming up with that idea. Another adaptation of the original Ultraman that I've got to talk about is by Kazuo Umezz. He did 2 volumes, and Umezz is really a horror manga artist, so when he did this Japanese Ultraman comic, it's really weird and horrific and off-putting, so you read these stories and you're like, I know this story, but the way he draws it, it's really uncomfortable. And an image that I see posted a lot online, it's sort of hard to see on the screen, is that Ultraman's going into a bar and he gets drunk.
That's shocking.
So Umezz is a big figure. He's this guy here that looks like he's dressed like Where's Waldo or something. And a lot of his stuff has also been adapted into movies. I think monster fans would definitely want to check out the Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch, because Noriaki Yuasa actually directed that in between his work on different camera movies. So it's another monster movie for kids at the same time. There's Nobuhiko Obayashi, who we will get back to. He directed The Drifting Classroom, which is another really weird movie, and much, much more. Umezz has a couple of other titles that are kaiju related out there. He has a story about a giant fish monster named Gyo that you see referenced a whole lot. I should specify this is not the same thing as the giant fish monster manga named Gyo from Junji Ito, because that manga is gross.
Gross?
Umezz also did an adaptation of The Lost World called Gamera. I haven't gotten to really read this one, so not really sure much about it. Continuing on the Ultraman path, an artist named Ken Ishikawa, who's best known for the series Getter Robo, which was sort of the start of the whole 3 small robots combined into one big robot thing.
Oh yeah, It's actually, wasn't it a combo of him and Go Nagai, who also made Mazinger Z?
Yep, and we're going to talk about Go Nagai later, but Getter is really Ishikawa's claim to fame, and he worked on it the most. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, Getter Robo is also really weird and really violent, and Ultraman Taro is the most kid-friendly of the Ultraman series, so he adapted it into a manga and made it really weird and really violent. So you can see this image here, Taro is ripping a monster in half and there's blood everywhere. But that's not even the weird part of the manga, because then later the apocalypse happens and you get a flashback where you find out that Ultraman created humanity, and it gets a little psychedelic.
Scott, that probably didn't happen in the show.
That is absolutely true. So, one Ultraman manga that you actually can buy in the States, it's a long out of print, is Battle of the Ultra Brothers by Mamoru Uchiyama. And it's this manga that's basically about a war in space. There's an evil space emperor. All of the Ultras get involved in fighting against him. It's really epic. And you have this hero that comes in named Melos, who sort of later got cribbed for the show Andro Melos in the 1980s. This came out around the same time as Ultraman Leo in Japan. So it's a well-known story, and just last year it was actually animated as a short for something called the Japan Animator Expo. I don't know, has anyone heard of this? Can anyone tell me who the curator / producer of the Japan Animator Expo is?
Is it Hideki Anno?
Yes. you win a copy of the first issue of Battle of the Ultra Brothers.
I already have it.
Okay. Anyone else want to win?
Come on, Dad, don't be sore about it.
I gave you one already.
Would you like another miscellaneous prize?
No, that's like that.
Yes, the director of Godzilla Resurgence is responsible for an animation of Ultraman from this manga. A couple others. Ultra Q the movie was adapted by Takao Saito, who is the creator of Chojin Barum 1 and Golgo 13, and really the dude responsible for like the dark, gritty, macho manga wave that started hitting in the 1970s. This manga's cool because it's all in color, which is super rare for manga. Another one that was adapted is Ultraman Great, you know, the Australian Ultraman. This had a US comic. This one is much more just a straight adaptation, but the artist for it is a dude named Kazuhiko Shimamoto. Shimamoto is really a hot-blooded, excitable type of dude, and his mangas really reflect that. There was a drama series about 2 years ago called Aoi Hono, or Blue Blazes, that's just about him going to school and learning to be a manga artist, and it's amazing. I definitely recommend anyone check it out. Another title that's pretty good is Ultraman Super Fighter Legend. This one also has an anime adaptation, but it's like a short half-hour type of thing. And basically, this was made as a tie-in for toys, actually. They were making these little like rubber figures that have snap-on armor, and because of that, you have these like really sort of cute, super deformed Ultraman that have like big armor that they never wear in the show, and that's basically why that is. And this one was done by Riku Sanjo, who I think would be best known for a series called Beat the Vandal Buster that ran in the US for a little while. Another good one is Ultraman Story 0, which is just a total prequel. It takes place like at the beginning, way in the beginning, before the Land of Light was the Land of Light. It sort of tells the origin story of how the Ultramen are all transformed into Ultramen from just being like regular dudes on an alien planet somewhere. And a lot of stuff that's in this was later used in the Ultra Galaxy movie, so that's sort of similar imagery. That if you go see that movie at the Pickwick later, keep this manga in mind.
Is it available in English?
It is not.
The red circle, that means it's over Japan.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, it's really hard to see the tiny screen up here, so sorry about that. Another series from another dude that some people might know if they're into the anime/manga scene. Yuzo Takada, he is the creator of All-Purpose Cultural Cat Girl Nuku Nuku, which that's a mouthful of a title to say, but he also did a series called 3x3 Eyes that was pretty popular in the 90s. And this is just like, this series is just telling the original Ultraman all over again, but done in like a modern, in like, yeah, 2003 I guess isn't modern anymore, but it was redone in the modern styles as opposed to sort of the classic manga from the 60s and 70s. Ultraman Nexus was adapted by Takashi Shina, who is the artist for Ghost Sweeper Mikami and Zettai Karin Children, aka Psychic Squad. So if you ever read Psychic Squad or watch the anime adaptation, you'll notice that their headquarters is called the Nexus, and that's where this is coming from. There are a lot of adaptations of Ultraman into comic book form, and just to illustrate this, here are 3 different adaptations of Ultra Galaxy that were running the same time in different magazines. So, you know, keep that in mind. There's a lot to choose from. I think the one that everybody's going to talk about when you're talking about Ultraman and manga, and it is available in English, is the Eiichi Shimizu and Tomohiro Shimaguchi Ultraman series. Basically, the idea of this one is that it's taking place, you know, probably 20 years after the original Ultraman has left Earth, and Hayata's son is developing all of these strange superpowers because apparently the alien left something behind. and he basically puts on this like Iron Man type of armor and goes around fighting all sorts of alien invaders and monsters and things. They're all human-sized, so that is sort of off-putting to a lot of Ultraman fans, where they sort of like look at it and like, this isn't really Ultraman, and yep.
In one of the later issues, one of them actually becomes huge.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Cool.
Red King gets Red King gets big in one episode.
Right, in volume 4 or
It's early, yeah, 3 or 4.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it can be a little off-putting to folks. So, but I love the designs in it. I think it's a really cool concept. It's a different take on Ultraman from what you've seen prior. And speaking of different takes on Ultraman, there's a lot of really weird ones out there. So we have a couple of examples here. We have Kaiju Sakaba, which is about the like villainous alien monsters and Ultraman running a bar. Now, there's a real life bar that this is based on that's all like Ultraman themed. I mean, this is obviously fictionalized, but it's a cool thing that they made a comic out of this concept. We also have Seven Cube, which is about like a high school club where all they do is they're devoted to Ultra 7. So it's sort of like a slice of life comedy hijinks type of thing. Akiko Fuji Story, which was actually written by Hiroko Sakurai, who was here at this convention. Yeah, it's basically about the filming of Ultraman from the perspective of Akiko Fuji. So, and then the weirdest one, which if you're familiar with Japanese stuff is not actually the weirdest because it was sort of inevitable, is this Ultra Personification project. And basically that's just like, what if all of the Ultraman monsters were also cute girls?
Yeah, that sounds weird until you realize that they've done that to like every franchise.
Yes.
Isn't there a manga or an anime that's already got like cute girls as monsters or something?
There are more than I could count. Then there are a whole lot of manga out there that really owe stuff to Ultraman that are, you know, sort of Ultraman-ish without being Ultraman per se. So I get into the fistfights with people over, say, Birdie the Mighty, which is a series about an alien cop who comes to Earth tracking an alien criminal. Accidentally, the cop kills a human being. She has to merge with a human being, and then whenever there's an alien threat, he turns into her body and fights the monster. Like, this sounds like Ultraman to me. Some people will disagree. Similar deal with 7 Billion Needles. That one has the benefit of saying that it is based on a prior American novel, but at the same time I read it and I think, sort of reminds me of Ultraman. Ultimate Girls is a straight up parody of Ultraman stuff. It's pretty crass, it's a lot of toilet humor, but every once in a while there's a moment, like, for an example, one I love is they determined that a monster's name is Bullmark because that's what's written on the bottom of his foot, and I'm like, yes! Here's one that there are fan translations available on the internet. It's called Mikaroon Cross, and it sort of combines the giant hero monster thing with Sailor Moon style magical girl, and you have these two characters, and depending on how they fuse together, they can either turn into a giant hero here or the sort of magical girl hero here. And you can see the Ultraman influence just in this image here, that you have like the swirling background and the silhouettes, and there's a lot of giant monster fights. The caveat I would say for this one is the giant hero, they don't make a big deal about it, but she's completely naked, so, be cautious. A little more conventional is Marika 7 by Shinpei Ito. He's the creator of Hyperdolls and Moldiver. This series has been running for quite a while. I think it's at 8 or 9 volumes right now, and it's just like a conventional Ultraman story, except it's a schoolgirl instead of a Science Patrol member, and it's really good, so check it out. But when you talk about stuff that's really, really inspired by Ultraman, there's definitely an elephant in the room, and that is Neon Genesis Evangelion. So a lot of people don't realize this, most of them are Evangelion fans. The Evangelion is sort of a combination of Jerry Anderson's UFO and the original Ultraman series. And it's basically, the premise is giant monsters are attacking at about once a week, and teenage boy has to get into a giant robot to go fight these monsters, and everyone is clinically depressed.
If anyone doesn't know, I don't know if it's just the English dub, but the monsters are called angels.
Yes, and the Japanese they're apostles, and the English dub they're angels. So.
Yes, and there's a lot of religious references in the whole show, like crosses and all that.
Right, which, same deal with Ultraman.
And just and another true fact, this series is directed by Hideaki Anno.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the director of Godzilla Resurgence is also the creator of the TV series for Neon Genesis Evangelion. I would recommend checking out the manga because the ending is much better. But yeah, Anno is the creator of Evangelion, and that's why you're getting this big push of merchandise right now for Godzilla versus Evangelion.
Yeah.
And, you know, so if you're seeing this and you're like, what is this purple robot that Godzilla's fighting? Why is my Jet Jaguar figure purple? Like, this is what it's all going back
Sadly,
to.
you don't have a pic. You don't have
They
that
actually
pic.
made Kiryu figures with the color of Evangelion. Like,
Yep.
Yep.
There's also Godzilla in colored as an Evangelion.
Oh, let's not talk about that one.
That one kind of looks like it's wearing a bikini. So yeah.
It makes more sense with Kiryu, though.
Yeah, the curious are great.
As a caveat, I will say, if you want to check out the Evangelion manga, check out the one by Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, because there are a lot of Evangelion manga out there, and most of them sort of assume that you've read the original, but they're like, oh, this is the spin-off where they're just all at high school and there's no monsters, or like, oh, this is the comedy parody, or this is the one where they're detectives or something, so you got to go for the original. And speaking of manga with a whole bunch of spin-offs, another one that's super popular and also had a movie from Shinji Higuchi recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, Attack on Titan. This is set in a post-apocalyptic future, and you've got basically a whole lot of people living behind a giant wall, and there's humanoid man-eating giants that are wandering around, and eventually they burst through the wall, and your main characters have to fight them on these like jetpacks with grappling hooks. It's pretty awesome, actually. I would suggest checking out the TV series. The original comic is also available right now.
Courtesy of Kodansha Comics.
Yes, indeed.
Question on the right.
Yep. What's up?
By the way, the Titans in the series are inspired by Gal from Gamma Guardian of the Universe.
Absolutely.
Yes, they are.
Sorry.
Ah,
Uh,
death was avoided.
Thank you.
That's a manga sampler that has a couple of different Attack on Titan things in it. Yeah. So the creator of Attack on Titan did say that he was inspired. The way that the giant monsters in Attack on Titan eat people is based on the way that Gauss eat people. So let's talk about Gamera now, shall we?
Nice.
So the suit actor Hurricane Ryu, you probably know him from, he was King Ghidorah in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. He was Batra in Godzilla vs. Mothra. He was Godzilla Jr. He was Kumasugami. He was Gilala in Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit. Like, he's done a whole lot of monster suit acting roles. He's also a manga author, and his work is crazy.
Crazy good or crazy bad?
Crazy good. So he did a full volume of Gamera manga, and in it, like, this is right before the Heisei movie hit. But there's things in this, like, Gamera picking up Giron and swinging him around like a sword, or this monster that's a powered Gauss, which is like a fusion of all of the classic Gamera monsters, and he like brings in monsters that were like, oh, we had this unused concept lying around that we never actually made a movie with, and he's like, I'm gonna put it in my comic book. You have, you know how the little kids will ride around on Gamera? Like, you have the villain riding around on Gauss the same way. Like, it's just full of like really outlandish stuff, and it's fantastic.
That's just begging for an anime.
Mahiro Maeda, who's also involved in Godzilla Resurgence, he did a short for one of the Gamera books that's basically, there's no dialogue in this one actually, so if the Japanese language barrier is a thing for you, like don't worry about this one, but it's just about like the ancient Atlanteans dealing with the Gauss and sort of prequel type of situation.
Cool. Actually, I think I heard Mahiro Maeda may have also been involved in Fury Road.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so when they were going to make a Mad Max anime, he was involved and came up with some sketch designs that they used in Fury Road.
Mm-hmm. Another Gamera manga that's out there is Gamera vs. Baragon, which if you've ever wondered, like...
Isn't it Barugon?
I meant to say Barugon, like Balgon, however. Yeah, Baragon, if you've ever wondered, like, how would that classic Gamera movie be if it were reinterpreted in the 90s? Well, the major artist on the Gundam comics, actually, is this dude named Kazuhisa Kondo, and he did a one-volume manga that's basically just Gamera vs. Baragon in the Heisei trilogy. So it came out in, I think, 1996. And then another one, I don't know much about this one because it's super, super hard to track down. It's Gamera vs. Morphos, came out in 1999. Gamera fights his evil doppelganger. Apparently that monster, I have been told, transforms into another monster. I haven't found any pictures of it online or anything like that. So if anyone finds it, let me know. And then we also got Gamera Hardlink, which is set in the middle of Gamera the Brave, sort of in that period of time when Gamera is captured by the authorities. This one, honestly, because it's sort of like not a prequel, not a sequel, but sort of a somewhere in the middle type of thing, I feel like it doesn't really advance the storyline. It's sort of a fun thing. It's from the creators of Arpeggio of Blue Steel, actually, but it's not as fun as the Hurricane Ryu story. So if you're gonna go for one Gamera manga, that's the one I would recommend. So again, Shinji Higuchi got really prominently noticed for his work on the Gamera movies, and he also did a short along with Hideaki Anno for the Giant God Warrior Appears in Tokyo. And some people have seen the short, but you should also be aware it's from a manga series by Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki is like that guy in anime that wins all of the Oscars and nobody else is allowed to. And one of my co-hosts will say that this is the only good thing he's ever made, and like, yeah, maybe. Like this manga is really a lot better than its movie adaptation. So I would.
And even with movie adaptation is considered one of the movies that were made on Wikipedia, it's just not so popular as the manga, I guess.
I would say the movie's more popular than the manga. I would just say the manga's better.
Yeah.
So I'm a hipster that way.
At least the manga is a little easier to follow. I mean, yeah, I've read the manga. It is long, and there's a lot of exposition in it, so the anime kind of simplifies it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the manga's 7 volumes, so.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So it's basically set in a post-apocalyptic future. There are some giant monsters that the main character runs into. It's not necessarily the focus, but there are giant monsters in it, so I would say track it down. Let's talk about post-apocalyptic futures a little bit. Shingo Honda has a manga series that's been going for several years, which is also it also got a live-action short. I believe it was Go Ohota that did it, but I don't remember for sure. But this one is basically The Walking Dead with kaiju. Like, a main character wakes up, monsters have taken over the world, and he just sort of like wanders through the wasteland, and there's all of these really disturbing, creepy-looking monsters that are, I don't know how well you can see like this cover art here, but this is not something I would want to run into in a dark alley, especially if it were 400 feet tall. So, this one is pretty graphic and nasty, so keep that one in mind. Also graphic and nasty is Gantz, which I mentioned earlier. This had a couple of live-action movies that were actually played in theaters here. And basically the premise of this one is that people have died, but instead of going to the afterlife, they're given a chance to come back to life if they go out every night and fight monsters. Some of the monsters are human-sized, some of the monsters are giant. All of the monsters are incredibly dangerous, and if you watch Game of Thrones and think this is intense, like, don't watch Gantz, because it's way more
Well,
queasy.
fun fact, there's one point in this arc where they actually fight dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, it's
Triceratops start walking on their hinds and have muscles.
like one of my favorite scenes is when somebody is like, oh man, what would main character guy do in this situation fighting this dinosaur? And at that point, main character guy shows up, he jumps out of the sky and cuts the dinosaur's head off, and it's like, come on. Well, answered that question. Another work that is super duper seminal and sort of a classic of Japanese manga is called Devilman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Devilman is the story of a guy that fuses with a demon, but sort of retains his human consciousness and uses it to fight other demons that are invading the realm, and things just get worse and worse and worse. What's up?
So Go Nagai is also responsible for the whole Mazinger series, and my
We're getting
personal
there.
favorite since I've
Well,
gotten into it, Mazinkaiser.
Yeah, well, we're getting there.
And don't forget Cutie Honey, too.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's not too many kaiju in Cutie Honey, so I'm gonna
But there's
skip
one thing
that
I
one.
want to add. There's a live-action movie of Cutie Honey that was directed by Hideaki Anno, too.
That's true.
His first live-action film, too.
I don't know. I think Ritual was his first.
I actually know you're right. That was his third. His first was a film called Love and Pop.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that. You can watch Love and Pop on YouTube, subbed, so it's a weird movie, but
Yeah. Devilman is a super intense series though, and I just had to use this one screen cap from. There's a manga series called Kingyo Used Books that's all about basically a used bookstore, and in one of the chapters, a little brat comes in and he just talks about like, there's no good manga, nothing can move me, I'm emotionally solid, and then he picks up Devilman and he reads it, and you see his facial expression here. He's traumatized. Like he went home to like reevaluate his life or something.
I think I heard Go Nagai also did another demon manga called Demon Lord Dante.
Yes, Demon Lord Dante was a prototype for Devilman. Devilman was like a TV series spin-off, but then he did the manga.
There's two adaptations, a 39-episode TV series where Devilman was supposed to take over the world, but fell in love with the human and fought against his brethren. And then there's a 2-episode OVA that's more faithful to the manga and is more violent.
Yeah, that one is beautiful.
Yeah, and it got a bad dub. It's so awesome.
That's also true.
For the OVA or the whole series?
The OVA, the dub
TV
is.
series is sub only. It never got dubbed.
I would quote it, but it's all profanity. So.
We're at 140.
Okay. Gonna skip over some other stuff. Go Nagai did do a straight up kaiju series called Garla. Being Go Nagai, there's giant robots at the end. Why are there giant robots? Well, because he's Go Nagai, and he created a whole bunch of giant robots. If you like the Shogun Warrior series, he made about half of them. So yeah, Mazinger, Groizer, Getter Robo, Jeeg, Grandizer. Yeah, great. All of the Mazingers. Another dude that's associated with robots is Mitsuteru Yokoyama, and you've probably seen some of his stuff done in live action as well. I'm going a little fast here because we're running a little behind. Naoki Urasawa also has 20th Century Boys, is a great series with giant robots in it. He's done a couple of other kaiju series. If you want to track me down and get details on some of these, we can in a bit.
Hey, Demi King.
Yes, Demi King, the manga about monsters without monsters in it. Basically, the series is about a prophecy that a monster will come and destroy the world, except then it never shows up. It's the Waiting of Godot of giant monster fiction. And it's been adapted into movies twice, so I think a lot of people might have seen the second live-action movie. Akuma-kun is a series from Shigeru Mizuki that was basically meant to be the rival to Ultra Q, and is about a little boy that makes a pact with Mephisto in order to gain powers to fight monsters. Shigeru Mizuki is a big figure in the world of manga, and he's basically the guy that's known for like reinvigorating the whole world of Japanese spirits. So yeah, sometimes he's a little inspired by American comics too. He did this one story called Bakigarasu, which is definitely an influence on Matango, whether they admit it or not. Like, oh, people show up on an island and turn into mushrooms. Like, Mizuku's seminal work, though, is a series called Kitaro, which is basically a big revival of the classic Japanese spirits, and it's sort of a Monster of the Week sort of story. And one of the classic stories that I just absolutely had to bring up for G-Fest is Creature from the Deep. So in this story, Kitaro gets an infusion of blood from a monster called Zeuglodon, and following true Axe Cop logic, he then turns into a Zeuglodon. You know, what does the authorities do to counteract this? Well, they build a Mecha Zeuglodon and have him fight. Now, I just want to point out, this is 1965. This is before Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. This is before King Kong Escapes. This is even before the King Kong show. As far as I know, this would be the first time when this story was told, except that it was told before. So Mizuki, prior to that, did a story called Kaiju Raban, which, you know, it's basically the same deal. This guy gets this infusion of blood, turns into a giant dinosaur, and they battles against a mechanical giant dinosaur that's his, you know, counterpoint. One difference is it is not an infusion of blood from Zeuglodon. It's this other monster called Gojira. So you might be going like, wait a minute, there's Godzilla manga? And in fact, there are Godzilla manga. We were saving the best for last. So this might be enough that you want to do the Shay dance. Yes, it's the Shay dance, not the Highland Fling. How do I know? Because it comes from a manga. It's actually from Osamu-kun.
Yeah.
So Godzilla's been done in manga for as long as there's been Godzilla, and almost every movie has some sort of manga adaptation of it. So here's a whole bunch of them. I think we can say, okay, well, same content as the movies, whatever. But a few of them I wanted to point out. Rodan was adapted by Jiro Kawada, who is the creator of Eight Man, or it was brought to the States as Tobar the Eighth Man, which was an inspiration for RoboCop. You might also know Kawada because he did in 1966 a Batman manga. And I just want to quickly bring up, in one of these Batman mangas, this is available in English in the US, by the way, there's bank robbers who are using a mechanical dinosaur to rob banks, and then an actual dinosaur shows up to fight the mechanical dinosaur. And it even has a scene where the actual dinosaur rips a piece of the mechanical dinosaur out, and it's like, this is 1966. That's a long time before 1974, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's an adaptation of Matango by a dude named Shotaro Ishinomori. Ishinomori has the title in Japan of the king of manga in the same way that Osamu Tezuka is the god of manga. Ishinomori did more pages than anyone else in comic book history. And here's him drawing Godzilla.
Is this the same guy who also created the Henshin Heroes with Kamen Rider?
Yes. Kamen Rider, Kikaider, Cyborg 009, the list goes on and on and on. Power Rangers.
Yep, Super Sentai.
Yep. Keiji Nakazawa, big name. His manga, Barefoot Gen, was like assigned reading in schools. It was a series about a boy growing up in a post-war Hiroshima. He also did Son of Godzilla, which is also about a boy growing up in a place after a big explosion, but you know.
I guess it's called Time Monsters.
All right, here's an adaptation that is available in English. It's The Return of Godzilla was released, I think, 3 different times by Dark Horse Comics. If you might notice that the English language version doesn't use the Japanese cover, it's this guy Bob Eggleton, who I believe you might know. So, Toshiki Hirano also did adaptation of Godzilla vs. Biollante. I really love the way he draws Biollante because it's like clearly like nothing like what's in the actual movie. Hirano's also the creator of XXIII. He did like Dangayo and Vampire Princess Mio and other stuff, but I also like that XXIII makes a little cameo in the manga, just sort of like hanging out on top of Godzilla's head. Gunhead is another one. This one is available in English, that's why I thought it would be good to bring up. You know, if you know the story behind this one, it was a giant robot series or giant robot movie that was originally a script for a Godzilla movie, and then they took Godzilla out of it and made it a robot thing. So this is Kiya Asamiya, creator of Steam Detectives. He also did Martian Successor Nadesco and some other stuff that you might know if you're a giant nerd like me.
Dark Angel?
Yes. The Heisei Godzilla series was adapted a couple of different times, like many of these things are, but I like that Takayuki Sakai has this whole giant continuity of, he did, 5 volumes in a row and it's all the same artist, and I like that, like, you watch the Heisei Godzilla, like, continuity is what you like, so having the same guy do it all, good stuff. So, there's also lots of original Godzilla stories out there. One of the earliest I could find was Saigo no Gojira, or The Last Godzilla. Basically, this takes place at the Japanese premiere of Godzilla King of the Monsters. So, like, that was re-imported from America into Japan, and they played it in theaters. And then when they played it, Godzilla, like, burst through the screen and went on a rampage looking for a baby Godzilla. I believe that's the way history went down. You see a lot of original monsters showing up for the first time in 1958. Sugiura, he's done a lot of titles, but I don't remember many of them. Yellow Man was one, but he was a big influence on Hayao Miyazaki and a lot of other people who became bigger things down the road. We've also got Shinji Nishikawa. I love Shinji Nishikawa's story because in the 80s he started doing fan comics and just going around selling them, and then Toho was like, hey, you should come work for us. So he worked on the designs for a lot of the Heisei monsters, and he has since done official comics for, one about the making of Godzilla stuff, one adaptation of Grand Caesar, but he still does fan comics. So, I mean, that's a neat thing. And he's coming to conventions in the US a whole lot. I have not seen him at G-Fest, but I believe he's at a convention later this month in Kentucky, Louisville, maybe?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Godzilla King of the Monsters, or Monster King Godzilla, by Hiroshi Kawamoto. This is another one that ran for 2 volumes and is maybe part of the Heisei series, but it's also completely crazy. So a lot of people were pointing to the Sea Baragon design here, which is like, oh, this is Heisei Baragon, except with a narwhal horn coming out of the front of his head. The super ugly King Godzilla design, which is Godzilla's body with like King Ghidorah arms, like heads for arms and Batra wings. Machine Godzilla, which is pretty sleek, and this came out a year before Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, so I wonder if Toho was taking notes. And then my favorite, like, weird bit of Apocrypha, there's also shorts in it of Godzilla Street Fighter stories, so you see him doing, like, the Shoryuken.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. In terms of anthologies, we have the Big Comics Original Godzilla special that came out in celebration of the 2014 movie. A lot of people were looking at this cover and being like, why does Godzilla look so weird on the cover? Well, that's because Big Comics Original, all of their covers are cute animals. So, like, yeah, they're going to have a cute Godzilla. Obviously. So this is a special, like, one-shot anthology, bunch of stories from different artists. So you have things like, this one is Godzilla showing up in samurai times, but also there's like the Planet X aliens on the Starship Enterprise-ish.
Or at least their version of it.
Yeah, as close as they can get legally. We have a story about a guy who's studying the monster language from Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. We have a story about a couple doing whoopee during a Godzilla attack, which is something I guarantee you will never see IDW put out a comic that does that. Some other great ones. There's like a straight-up Mothra story in here. There's a great one that's Godzilla fighting King Ghidorah with absolutely no dialogue, and it's just beautiful art. There's one from the creator of Yokai Hunter that's about Godzilla, a boy who claims to see Godzilla whenever there's disasters, and it's not clear, like, is he crazy or is he actually seeing Godzilla here? Like, it's neat. There's also a 2-page short that I was just over the moon ecstatic about by an artist named Rumiko Takahashi, and she's best known for
Inuyasha.
Yep, Inuyasha, Ranma 1/2, Urusei Yatsura. She's one of the best-selling manga people of of all time. I mean, 5th richest woman in Japan because of comic books. So, but her work is really great, and she sort of talks about like how the manic energy in her own comics comes from seeing these rampage scenes in Toho movies. But anthologies, there's one that we got to talk about, and this is 1990's The Godzilla Comic. Has 2 volumes. What's up?
This is the one with the weird story written by Hurricane Ryu, where Godzilla gets like armor and a sword and stuff.
Yes, and we translated that. It's available on his blog.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a couple ones I feel like talking about. There's one that's Godzilla fighting the U.S. military from the creator of Irresponsible Captain Tyler. There's one from the director of Giant Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit, which is Godzilla and King Ghidorah fighting, except they're just giant plush dolls. Just like the cute dolls, except they're destroying cities. There's one from Akio Jisoji, the guy that directed a lot of the classic Ultra Q Ultraman episodes. And it is about a guy that gets abducted by aliens, and it ties into Japanese mythology and is super weird. We have a translation of that one up as well. Hurricane Ryu has a story in here about him being a suit actor and his rivalry with Mr. Uejima. Like, who could that be? Like, I don't know, some other suit actor guy that is older than him. The creators of Dance in the Vampire Bund have a story also in this that's about Godzilla fighting another monster. He gets super mutated at the end, and I think it's interesting because this sort of looks like the Millennium design to me. I don't know, maybe I'm just reading too much into it. This one we also see online a lot, the whole Biollante fused with King Ghidorah. That's a story that exists. The ones I really want to talk about, though, are Shinobu Kaze has a story called Warning from G, which might be the weirdest Godzilla story ever. We have a couple contenders here, but this one is Godzilla's attacking. There's a martial artist out walking the street with his wife. The martial artist is like, honey, I gotta go take care of this. So he goes and he uses a karate move and he kills Godzilla with it. He dies in the process, and a year later, the wife is visiting the grave, and her baby gets up and starts throwing rocks at her, and then proclaims, like, I was reborn as a human being, but in my previous life, I was Godzilla. And then it gets weird from there.
How weird are we talking?
You can check it out on his blog. I did a fan translation of it.
Yeah, it's a sort of like 2001: A Space Odyssey type of surreal trip through the afterlife. It's a hoot. But yeah, as you brought up, Hurricane Ryu has a story called Monster Warrior Godzilla, where basically Godzilla is on a different realm. All of the kaiju live like as sort of medieval type barbarians. It's very like Conan style. Modern humanity is coming into their realm and attacking them and killing them. So Godzilla goes on a crazy rescue mission to pick up this wood nymph that the humans are using for nefarious purposes. And it's a lot of fun. There's all sorts of like kaiju references throughout it. So you can just tally them up. I was like, I should make liner notes for this, but there's too many and I am too lazy for that. So. But yeah, this is definitely one that you see posted about all the time online. However, there is definitely another one.
And that one's translated too on his blog. I
Yes.
translated that one.
This lady is amazing. She has been doing a lot of translations for Godzilla stuff, including...
Oh, yes.
Yes. Some people will know this one, some people will not. In 1979, Toho was thinking about redoing their Godzilla movies. 1978. Also, Star Wars had just come out, and Toho had just had a big success with a movie called House. That's how they say it in the trailer, House. So don't just say house, say House. And that movie is completely crazy pants, bonkers, bananas, heads, insane. Like, I cannot describe how weird the movie House is. But the director of that went to Toho, and he's like, I think we should do a Godzilla movie, sort of cashing in on Star Wars, and he gave them this pitch, and it didn't go into production. But he got an artist to work on him with it, and this artist was Katsuhiro Otomo. who later on in his career did a manga called Akira, also directed a movie based on that manga, and that is like considered like the big anime movie. Like there are absolute vodka commercials that say like the absolute anime, and they play clips from Akira. Like it's that big of a deal. But yeah, his career started with this weird story that starts with Godzilla washes up dead on a beach. Scientists conclude that Godzilla has died of diabetes. So they bring in a psychic medium to scan Godzilla's brain. The brain tells her that, in fact, Godzilla is from an alien planet, the planet Godzilla. Her name is actually Roseanne, and she's pregnant and died before she could give birth. So they're like, okay, well, let's do the sensible thing and turn Godzilla's corpse into a spaceship, launch it back into space so it can go back to its home planet. And from there it gets weird. Yeah, so you get this journey through space with a lot of stuff that doesn't entirely make sense, and you wind up in a giant battle on the Godzilla planet of this giant frog-like alien that can vomit spiders and shoot swastikas from its belly button, and it would have made one heck of a Godzilla movie. That's all I can say.
Can't imagine why they didn't make that movie.
No.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
But yeah, so that's Godzilla, but you know, even super obscure stuff can have manga adaptations. I've got a whole bunch of examples here. Like, did anyone know there was a Cloverfield manga? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I already know this.
Yeah. There's a lot of biographies. Like, you can read a manga that's just about the life of Hideaki Anno or Eiji Tsuburaya or Ray Harryhausen. And then, you know, there's a whole lot of other stuff out there that, like, I just could not get to in the limited time that we have here. So on that note, I think we'll just, we'll go to questions.
What's your blog real quick, just so we can find it?
It's mazerpatrol.wordpress.com.
I'm sorry, Mazer Patrol?
Mazer, like the tanks.
It's MASER.
Yep. Anyone else?
So mazerpatrol.org, right?
That WordPress.
Yeah, it's a WordPress. I'm not a good
Do like a
professional.
search for Mazer Patrol, you'll probably
Yeah,
find
it's
it.
one of the first things.
All right. Well, if there's no other things, we can have a little trivia contest. Who can tell me who the god of manga is?
Osamu Tezuka.
Yes. This is Volume 1 of Ultraman by some people.
Awesome.
Who can tell me who the authors of that Ultraman manga are? That's a tough one.
Don't tell.
Can I guess again?
No.
All right.
I'll just lean forward.
Yeah. Shinji Higuchi had 2 kaiju movies come out last year that were part of a duology. What were they?
Attack on Titan.
Yep. You have this one already?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. What was the yokai manga featuring the Mecha Zeuglodon?
Kitaro.
Yep. We've got a couple of manga samplers here. You prefer Ultraman or Monster Hunter?
Ultraman.
All right. Who was the cover artist for the Return of Ultraman or Return of Godzilla manga?
Bob Eggles?
Yes.
Who said that?
I didn't know I was supposed to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay. So this is actually signed by Shimizu and Shimaguchi. They were at Comic-Con last year, and this dude got to meet them. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
We've also got some Viz manga samplers from 2016. They give them out free, so if anyone wants to just sort of check out some of the recent manga just to get a feel for the genre. The only thing like tangentially related in it is Monster Hunter, so it's not necessarily relevant, but
Wasn't Monster Hunter a video game?
It was.
yes.
Anyone else want one?
Ah.
Oh wait, I'll take one.
Oh, no, I didn't want one.
Okay.
Nice.